Gintarė Skaistė is the Minister of Finance for the nation of Lithuania. She joins us today to talk about the Russian invasion of Ukraine, how it impacts Lithuania and the Baltics, and the West, for that matter. Minister, thanks for joining us.
Thank you.
You know, about 10 days before the invasion began, I sat down with your ambassador here in Washington, D.C., and she literally had tears in her eyes. She was concerned. Why is that feeling so strong, not only among government officials, but among the people of Lithuania?
I think it's just because of the history, because previously we had our own relations with Russia when they occupied Lithuania and other Baltic states. And during 50 years in the Soviet Union, we know how is to live with the Russian presence all the time. So I think now we understand that then we made the right choice in the 90s when we decided to separate completely from Soviet Union to direct ourselves to the West. And now we see that Ukrainians, maybe who haven't been so decisive, they're paying their price.
Lithuania, along with Estonia and Latvia, have provided military assistance, financial assistance, certainly emotional support to Ukraine. As a proportion, it's far more than anyone in the West has. The West has certainly contributed, but your nations have really stepped up in the process. Why is it so important to make these investments?
We see ourselves like the ones who are making the push, who are pushing other countries to do their own decisions. We're small, but we're very decisive. If we're helping in our sense in a big scale, for big countries it's not a big money, but for us it's really something. Lithuania's assistance to Ukraine in military, financial and humanitarian support was 1.3% of GDP. That's a lot. And if the other countries would do the same, the result would be much higher. But anyway, we see ourselves like the ones who have to push others to do the harder decisions than they do in the other case.
Well, you have been leading the way. Lithuania was the first to suspend gas imports, and then that has spread all over Europe for that matter. But how important are the steps, the economic steps, to try to put a chokehold on Russia?
I think the sanctions are really important, and sometimes they try to manipulate the opinion of the society, saying that sanctions are hurting yourselves, but not Russia. And in my opinion, sanctions are really hurting Russia, and we have to keep with them. And sanctions policy is not something as a sprint, it's a marathon, and we have to keep on going, because now we see that when the sanctions that are really important to Russia as a oil price cap went into force, the revenues of the Russian budget decreased sharply. And we have to continue with the sanctions to have the impact at the end of this year. I would say that they will feel it very strongly.
The West has implemented a number of sanctions. Are there some of those that work better than others? Are there examples of what has worked well? And are there examples of what have not worked as well and could be improved?
I think everybody expected much more from the sanctions, but I think that's the wrong perception. The sanctions that are working really well, in my opinion, is the oil price cap, for example. In the end of last year, we introduced the oil price cap, and together with the price cap, the price for oil in the market decreased sharply. So we're buying cheaper oil, and at the same time, Russia is getting less revenues in their budget. So if they want to keep the war machine and invest in their equipment, in their military, they have to have money. And if they will not get money from the oil and the gas in Russia, they will have to use their sovereignty welfare fund, which is not unlimited. They have some certain amount of money, but the money is not unlimited. So they can keep fighting for some period of time, but I think for longer period of time is not available anymore.
The Biden administration, literally on day one, in January 20 of 2021, implemented a number of steps, environmental and otherwise, that made it more difficult for American companies to produce oil and gas. That has had an impact on the price on the world market, but it has also made less availability. And so those countries like your own, or throughout Europe, that have depended on Russian oil or gas did not have the alternative that might have existed if those policies had not been implemented. How big of a negative impact has that had in this entire process?
We're always asking all the allies that in this current situation, when Russia is trying to impose their policy, we have to be very open and to help each other in all the matters that is available. So if there is any possibility to produce more oil, more gas in this current situation, it would be very useful.
The human side of this, I think it's lost. Sometimes we see statistics and we know how many people were killed or how many buildings were destroyed. But the human side of this, tell me that the perception on the world stage was that Russia was going to march in and have a very short conflict and declare victory in 30 days or less. We're well over a year in now. Russia is by no means guaranteed a victory. In fact, there's those that think it's maybe headed in the opposite direction. What's the feeling in the region, in the area? Is there surprise? Is there excitement? Is there, obviously there's concern, but what's the feeling that best describes the people who may have been impacted more had this conflict gone quicker?
I think there is a wrong perception that Russians thought that they will win in 3 days, because previously they were preparing for the war, I think for half of the year, because they are using not only the weapons on the ground, on the battlefield, but also economic weapons like gas prices. Because half a year before the invasion to Ukraine, they decreased the amount of the gas that's coming to Europe, and that's why the prices increased sharply. And the dependence of European countries on Russia increased, and I think they thought that with that weapon, they will force other countries to do some decisions. And that didn't happen. Europe didn't surrender. And I think that looking at the countries like Lithuania, like Poland, like other Baltic countries and Ukraine, we know that history, and we will not surrender. And the same I thought about the Ukraine, that people of Ukraine will not surrender. And if there is any possibility to fight and to win, they will do anything what's on their hands. So the perception of today that they will fight till the end and they will not give up.
One item seldom talked about is Reconstruction. When all is said and done, there's going to be a big job to do in Ukraine. What role, if any, should the West have in the reconstruction process?
I think a huge role, because we have experience and we know how to help, and also we have funds for a current period of time, because some projects cannot wait and the reconstruction should begin even before the war is over. Some reconstruction will go on already in 2023, like, for example, power plants, electricity production, and also some roads and some housing projects, because people should live somewhere, and the electricity is some basic need, and we have to invest in something that would let them to produce, to have their businesses ongoing and to collect their taxes. And with that, West really can help. Afterwards, the bill is really huge. The World Bank counted that the total amount for reconstruction is around $400 billion. That means that's a lot, and somebody has to collect that money. So in our opinion, there is a very good source for that. It's a Russian frozen assets. And in the Western countries, in democratic society, we have in some countries Russian frozen assets, and frozen assets also of Russian oligarchs. So if we could find the legal ways to use that money, that could help Ukraine to be restored and reconstructed in the prudent way.
Final thought before you go, and that is most Americans, of course, have never been to Ukraine or Lithuania or Estonia or anywhere in the region. So what's the most important thing they need to know? Why is this a priority to someone who's in Iowa or Idaho or Maine?
I think it's a rules-based order, what we are saving, not the precise country, but this country decided that they want to be democracy, they want to be part of the Western society, and somebody is grabbing them back and not letting them to have their own decisions. And I think if we will let the evil to do what they want, the evil will spread, and then the rule of law in democratic world that we know will fail.
Gintarė Skaistė, Minister of Finance in Lithuania, thanks very much. We appreciate the time.
Thank you.